Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to our hybrid Bible study on the book of Genesis. This is our penultimate study on this wonderful opening book of Scripture, and we will be looking predominantly at chapters 45 and 46, maybe even a little bit of 47 if we are feeling up to it this week. I pray you're all having a wonderful week so far, so let's get cracking and look at the time where Joseph finally makes himself known to his brothers. Joseph said to his brothers in verse number 3, I am Joseph. His first question, of course, is about his father. Is he still alive? His brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Understandable. As we have talked about in previous weeks, there is this real fear that comeuppance could be coming their way. They have feared it. Of course, they have talked about it in previous chapters when they made the journey back to their father. And here now, they're probably fearing this brother we sold into slavery. We thought he was dead, and now he is standing before us. We are going to get it in the neck now. We deserve it. And after all, when we think about it from our own human perspective, if we have been wronged in one way or another, it's natural for our first inclination to get our own back on that person or people. Now, as we see here in verse number 6, the famine has been going for 2 years, and as we talked about last week, there would be 7 years of famine. So we're not even halfway through this great famine. Very important thing to note here is in verse 7. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. Very important to take that into consideration. God works his way, his will through many means, not just the positive ways, but of course the ones which could be construed as negative, which of course being sold into slavery certainly is. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, he says to them. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen. You shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. So what he is saying is get everything. Not just the brothers, but we're talking about their children, their relatives, their family. Not to mention, of course, Israel, Jacob, and just come down to the land of Egypt. That is what he is saying here. Not just a brief journey, but actually moving out there. Needless to say, his biggest excitement, as we saw before with his whole encounter with his youngest brother, Benjamin, it is he that he fell upon his neck and wept in verse 14, and Benjamin reciprocated with the very same emotions. So this, of course, brought great joy to Pharaoh and his servants, and he is given the means to have his family come back, wagons, provisions for the journey, and a change of clothes so they would be able to make it back safely and soundly. So they went back to the land of Canaan in verse 25 and saw their father Jacob, and they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. His heart became numb, for he did not believe them. No kidding, he's been told that his son was lost. They showed him the blood on the cloak we talked about many weeks ago, and now all of a sudden he has been told that his son, his precious son, has actually been alive this whole time. So it's understandable for him to react in this way. Of course, I think we'd all react in the same way if something similar happened in our own lives. So they told him everything that had happened, and he is, of course, very silly thing to say and acknowledge here, very much looking forward to seeing his son once again. So Israel took his journey and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel, Jacob, in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob, and he said, Here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. Two important things to note here in verse 3. Great nation language reminds us, of course, of the covenant formed with Abram in Genesis chapter 12 and recounted in various instances following on from that, of course, with Isaac and his almost sacrifice on top of the mountain being one sure and certain example. Do not go to Egypt. He was warned not to go down to Egypt before, but what God is telling him is that he is going to be with him every step of the way. It's not as if God resides in a small pocket of the land, but he is omnipresent. He's omniscient, of course, so he is with Jacob all the way. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. Now note that little section here, I will also bring you up again. That should bring to our note and our minds here of the exodus from Egypt many years later. God would lead the people out of the clutches of Pharaoh and back to the direction of where they were supposed to be, where they had come from. Now we are told about all the generations and all the people who had made their way to Egypt to be with Joseph and to settle in the land. And we've got some wonderful names here which you can read at your own leisure if you are so interested. We're talking about the sons, the daughters of the various sons, the different tribes, of course, which we will look at next time. Judah, it goes before the brothers in verse 28 to Goshen. And Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. A wonderful, emotional, loving moment. Let me die since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive, his father said. I will go up and tell Pharaoh and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock. And this is basically going back to what we talked about in the previous chapter here in Genesis number 45, where Joseph encourages his brother to settle in a land near him. And that, of course, is known as the land of Goshen. Now that brings us now to chapter 47, where we'll touch upon very briefly. Pleased we're getting this far through. And they settle there. They have that little encounter with Pharaoh, who says it's okay, let them settle in the land of Goshen. And they are going to be put in charge of the livestock, as we see in verse number 6. And verse 7, Joseph brought in Jacob his father and stood in before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days of the years of your life? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourning. So, a couple of things to take note of here. Sojourning, again, that gives us the imagery of not being in a settled state. Sojourning is going from place to place. There's no fixed abode. That is pretty much what we're seeing with that usage of that verb. 130 years, long life is usually a blessing from the Lord. That is how it is perceived. Indeed, that's how it would have been perceived by Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Again, that could be like a God bless you, a goodbye, a greeting, a farewell, so to speak. But he of course, is a very godly man, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he shared that blessing with someone. Just like you go down the street, or you encounter someone and they say, have a nice day, and you say, God bless you, that kind of thing. That's the kind of imagery we might get in our minds today at the very least. And we hear about the famine and Joseph's role in that and how important, of course, he was throughout this whole process indeed. Now that leaves us now at Genesis chapter 48, with 3 chapters left of this incredible opening book of Scripture. So next week we will have our final hybrid Bible study. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me or put them in the content section here on YouTube, or indeed on Facebook if you are so inclined. We haven't had it really for the previous weeks, but if you want to start a trend now for the last couple of weeks, that is perfectly okay as well. So may God bless you today. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon, God willing. Take care. Bye-bye.